Welcome to Public Forum, a community outreach program produced by North Idaho College located on Lake Coeur d'Alene. Featuring guests from around the globe addressing a wide variety of subjects, Public Forum serves to educate and enlighten. Please join host and moderator, political scientist Tony Stewart, in welcoming today's guests.
I am most pleased to welcome you to today's program. Our topic today is America's Space Program, Students' Visit to the Houston and Alabama Space Centers. I'm wanting to report to the viewers that this is a really very interesting program about an educator in Idaho who some years ago found a way to, through raising private funds and grants, to bring astronauts to his school and to have his elementary students learn firsthand about the program and also to inspire them in their studying. I welcome to the program Chris Nacarado, who is from Priest River, Idaho. Congratulations, Chris, on what you've done over a number of years. And I know you have some of the things with you today. We're going to show some slides and some video, and your shirt today really illustrates what you've done. So welcome to the program. Thank you for taking time to be with us today.
Well, thank you for having me here.
And as always, I'm so pleased to have regular panelist Janelle Burke, and as our tradition is, we start our questioning with panelist Janelle Burke with our guest.
Thank you, Tony. Chris, it's a great pleasure to have you here and talk about this fun project that you've done. I know your students love doing it. You've been very successful in getting a number of them to go to a space camp. Tell me, what ages do they go? What ages are they when they go to the camp?
They start off about 9 or 10, and that would be the 4th grade, which is the grade I teach. And then they would move up 5th grade, 6th grade, and that would be the first camp. Then the second camp would cover junior high level, and then the third camp would be high school level. And then you can actually do things as adults as well if you would like to continue your studies and adventure.
So they can actually go to more than one camp.
Yes.
And they can continue on with the program. And how long do these camps last?
The camps generally last, if you do the parent-child, which is a weekend adventure, and several of my students have done that. And generally it goes for a week-long camp at these institutions. There's one institution in California, one in Alabama, and one in Florida.
So they're different places. And do they get to meet famous people while they're there?
Yes, many of my students who have gone have met famous astronauts that have been there, Gordon Cooper, Buzz Aldrin, Alan Shepard, to name a few.
And I'm sure that's very inspiring when they come home. They're just all ready to get into their studies and their classwork, and it really brings home to them how you go about becoming an astronaut. Is that correct?
Absolutely, it really does. And the ratio coming back from camps is very strong in favor of the camps, is the educational experience that they get there, because the kids come back and it's shown that the kids have a 90 to 95% increase in the amount of math and science courses they take all the way through high school and in college because of their experience is so powerful at the camps.
Well, it does sound like it's lots of fun. And what kind of, if let's say a week camp, what are some of the things that they take during that week camp?
Oh, okay. Some of the events that they will do their shuttle training. They will actually conduct a mission where they will be either a mission specialist, a pilot, a commander. They will be perhaps in mission control and do some of the groundwork. Some of the kids have come back and talked about missions to Mars that they've actually simulated. They will do a variety of training, whether it be the zero gravity chair, the multi-axis trainer, which really teaches students how to what a flat spin would feel like in an airplane and how to correct it. Just to name a few of the things that are there.
So they do quite a lot of those things. Now, you've been to some of these camps too. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience?
Sure. My experience is I went last January down to the Kennedy Space Center, where one of the camps is located. And my students have been to California and they've been to Huntsville. And my last one was to get a goal was to get a student to Florida, which is the biggest of the camps. And I decided I'll go and check it out myself first, just to see what it's like. And I was given a VIP pass at the camp by the administration there as a teacher to go in and train privately on a lot of the machines. So they gave me a guide for the day, and we got to go through all the simulators and a lot of the things that the kids do. And I saw a lot of the kids there, and it was really a great experience.
Chris, for our viewers who are in other states, Priest River, Idaho is in northern Idaho. It's a very small town. It's not even 1,000 people, I believe. Is that correct?
It's about 2,000.
No, it's about 2,000. It's a small town.
Yes.
in northern Idaho, and which is also a beautiful town. But it's not in a major city, and you have been able to bring astronauts to your class. How many years have you been doing this?
This is my 7th year of doing this.
Having visitors to your classes?
Yes, my 7th year.
How many astronauts have visited during that time?
I've had 11 astronauts and 1 cosmonaut.
That is amazing accomplishment on your behalf. And how have you done that? I know you have great connections now with astronauts, but I was talking to your principal about that you're a very good fundraiser, and also you've written grants. Tell our viewers a little bit about how you can have such a remarkable program over so many years that's inspired your students. I know you use this in your teaching technique to encourage their self-esteem and for them to have goals and ambitions. But how did you do it?
Well, it started off basically from ground zero. I just had an idea that we wanted to send a letter to NASA and see if they would take the kids' names up in space. And we got a letter back from one of the astronauts, and he wrote and said that that doesn't generally happen because NASA has strict guidelines and rules about things like that and taking things up. And from there, we made the first contact with him, and so we decided to invite him there. And initially, a lot of the early fundraising that we did was basically pounding on doors and not asking for donations, in which the communities were really great at giving us money. And then from there I did some grant writing, more formal grant writing, in order to, as our level of intensity went up with the program, and we wrote grants to get more money in that regards.
Well, and now you have such an in with them that it's become a tradition. I'm sure that others will come in the future. At this time, what we're going to do, I believe that our viewers should be able to visually see some things, and so you've been generous to bring some slides, and we're going to have the slides. First one's up now. Would you tell us what this is, Chris?
Okay, this is the down at Kennedy Space Center. This is the mission control, what they would call a launch firing room, and it's basically set up as it was in 1960s. And you go in, and they will run a simulation of an Apollo Saturn launch, and it will show a whole sequence of the computers lighting up, and it gives the tourists there a really good idea of what it was like to sit in mission control. And the everything is the same there. The cigarettes, the jackets, the pages are still turned to the exact same page as they were back in the 1960s in the Apollo launches. So it's a marvelous experience. And they show a huge video on the video screens of the rocket actually launching, and the windows will start rattling as you're going through this experience.
And you visit that, and you've firsthand seen that. We'll get the next slide now, and you can identify it for us. And I think we have a total of about 7 we're going to show. Here we are with the next slide.
Okay, this is the Saturn 1B. This is what they call Rocket Park at Kennedy Space Center. And as you come through the front gates, this is the first thing that you're greeted with, is this huge display of rockets. And you can see some of the Gemini and Mercury Redstone rockets in the background there. But the one that's in the foreground here is the Saturn 1B, which was the first Apollo 7 mission to go up in the 1960s.
So, and here's the next one. Now, again, when you visit the center, you would see this also.
Yes, this is more of Rocket Park, and I, at this point, had just gotten a little bit closer to some of the back rockets and would stand at the base of them and look up, and it was a very incredible experience just to imagine how these things even get off the ground. They're so heavy.
Yes, they're very big. It's amazing what humans have done. Now, here you are with, whom is this?
This is Flight Director Gene Kranz. If anybody's watched the movie Apollo 13, he was the head flight director on Apollo 11, the first moon landing. Apollo 13 was with NASA for many, many years. And I had this very special opportunity to get to meet and talk with him in Houston when I was down there, a person who's really one of my space heroes, a fantastic individual.
And then the next here, the photograph, you got to actually set in one of the rockets, is that correct?
Yeah, this is one of the Mercury capsule simulators at Kennedy Space Center. And it's actually live and active as far as it has a simulation that you work in it. And back in the Mercury days, everything had to be done manually because there really wasn't any computers to work with. So you would have to push buttons, and so you were timed at how fast you can push a series of buttons, and it is very difficult to score well.
There's been a lot of advancement in the space program in the years it's been going, and here you are again.
This is the multi-access trainer, the one that trains students to simulate a flat spin. in an aircraft and how they would be able to pull out of it and maneuver out of it. And it is a very, very fast-moving, whipping action that really spins you around quite fast. It was a lot of fun.
So it's a lot like training for being astronaut. And here is the last slide we have as we close out the visit that you had.
This is the Vehicle Assembly Building. They call it the VAB down at Kennedy Space Center, and it is a huge, huge building, and it houses the shuttles. This is where they take the shuttles in to repair them and to get them ready for the next launches. And from miles and miles away, you will see this building out in the Florida landscape. And what really struck me is that the flag that you see on the building, each stripe, they said, is so big that you could drive a school bus down each one of the stripes that's on the flag, and it really helps to someone to imagine just how big this building is.
Well, what a wonderful, special experience you've had, and when your students go to these different centers, they get to see the same kind of things and learn from that process. I want to turn now to the astronauts visiting your school at Priest River. And I thought the best way for us to do that was to show some video. And I have chosen from the video you gave me, and thank you for doing that, Chris, 4 different scenes. And I've been there myself, and your students are so polite, and they escort you in, and you've simulated it in such a wonderful way. I'd like to ask our staff now to put up, it's about 2.5 minutes, the video, and we will watch that and then talk to you after we have seen.
6-year-old kid, I've kept this dream for 29 years now, and I'm 35 now. Now, it was my dream and my goal to shake the hands of a man who's been on the moon. So today, in front of all of you, I get to share that dream and let you know that dreams do come true. And I've worked awful hard to get it to come true. But right now, I'm going to make this dream come true and shake the hand of a man who's been on the moon.
But once I decided I wanted to work for NASA, I just kind of stuck with that goal, and I got into the program. And it's been a thrill to be part of that team. And it really is a team. When you see a shuttle lift off, you might just see the crew, but that's just like the tip of the iceberg. It takes thousands of people doing their job and working together to get those launches off the pad. And that's why I'm really impressed by what you're doing here today, because it's the very same kind of effort and just as important.
You folks are really fortunate to have a person like Mr. Knack here.
Yeah.
I've never seen a program like this, not even something approaching this. It's wonderful. It really is great. And so enjoy your time with him. You'll remember this, your experience here in the 4th grade for the rest of your lives. And like Linda said, you're learning all about teamwork and leadership. And
The library area?
Classrooms here?
Have it all. It's grown a lot. This is what I call my swarm technique. For those kids who are not on task and looking around at the walls, I have every space covered so that they will thoroughly be covered.
A half hour just to read your charts here.
Well, they're going to read something in here.
Attention! Astronaut Tom, Dr. Tom Jones on deck.
Good morning. Class, officially, this is our astronaut, Dr. Jones.
Thank you so much, NACA team. It's great to be back. It's been 3 years since I've been here. Probably 3.5 years, actually. And, I've had a few travels of my own in that time, but I understand that you guys have been really revved up this fall, getting ready for this visit and your launches. And I'm really looking forward to hearing about your work and talking with you about some of my experiences, too. So thank you very much for the kind welcome this morning, and I hope you'll have a great day today. I'm positive we will.
Well, that was just really interesting to see some video for our viewers. And when I came and visited, I was certainly not an astronaut, but the young people treated one with lots of respect and escorted one to your room. And your room is filled with photographs and different illustrations of the space program. And the way the students were responding to the astronauts, it's just got to leave a really major impact on them. I have one more question and then go back to Janelle, and that is, once those astronauts have visited and you've gone through these ceremonies and all, and we only showed a very small part of the video you have, what kind of impact does it have on the students? How do they act differently after one of these visits? And how does it change or make it easier for you to teach all the disciplines that you must teach with those young people?
The space theme really gives me a hook to work with. You know, it really captures the students' imaginations, and that was one of the things that I've really wanted to do as a teacher, was to be able to teach kids how to dream, because they think it's very difficult for kids nowadays to be able to do that, because when I was growing up, you would dream about flying, you would watch the birds and get an idea of what it must be like to fly. But with a lot of the video games and things that are out there now, kids can virtually do that, and it's easier for them to be able to simulate something like that. So it's harder for them to dream, I found. So one of my goals was to be able to show them the process of how to set a goal for yourself, make it a dream, and then how to complete that process. And as far as some of the farther kids that have gone, you know, past my school, I've seen a lot of the high school kids come back, and they still want to come back and join in and are very excited about it, the process and what they learned, and they remember everything about the experience. And they like to come back and be my alumni and come back and train the new kids coming in, and they love to come back and train.
Thank you. Janelle Burke.
Well, all I can say is, wow, I thought that was really very impressive. Your kids are impressive, and it's great that you've been able to do this kind of program in your school. I would also say, as a person who's visited the Kennedy Space Center, that if people are going to be visiting Walt Disney World or spending some time in Florida, that one of the things that they should keep on their agenda and on their list is a visit to Kennedy Space Center. Even if they can't do all the things that you did, they can enjoy a lot of in history and learn a lot about the space program. But having said all of that, I know that there are going to be some people out there who are going to say, wow, I'm really interested. Could my kid go to that program? Could my kid go to a space camp? And what do you say to them?
Any child can go to space camp. It's a matter of raising the funding for them to go. There are also grants that space camps offer for students that can academically try to obtain a grant. And I've actually had one of my students win a grant to attend space camp. And so there are many channels to get a student there. And a lot of it is just plain desire, is if they want to go. I, as a teacher, I always committed myself that if I had a student to go bad enough, then they would go, and I would get them there. And so far I've been able to get them all there, so anybody can go.
And you've said that a lot of them have worked on getting the funds that are necessary. They may do their own projects. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Many of my students have, sometimes the parents would help to pay for it. Sometimes they would get a grant, as I just stated. And one of my students, in particular, I remember, did a car wash on a weekend, and she raised all her money in one day to go. And it was just a fantastic experience that the whole town came out to help raise money for this kid to go, and she had a marvelous experience.
Now, we've talked about how this helps them with their math and science skills and encourages them in the math and science area, but how about in reading? Wouldn't a lot of students like to read about the astronauts and about space and that kind of thing?
Reading in particular was one that we really had some great successes in, as well as all subjects, because I was able to incorporate this whole experience into every subject in the academic curriculum. And that was one of my goals, is not just teach science, but to broaden every aspect. A lot of the astronauts at Houston, that was one of the things that we discussed with them, is that the astronauts study not just one topic of science, but they are also cover a lot of other areas in their own curriculums that they do.
And they have to be able to write as well as to read and to do mathematic problems.
Absolutely. And one of the writing projects that I do with the students is each year, my students, I will have them adopt an astronaut, and they will learn all about this particular person throughout the year. And at the end of the year, as their writing progresses and they will learn of the different forms of writing, I will actually have them write to their astronaut as the formal letter. And it is, I would say at this point, probably 86 to 90% of all students who wrote their astronauts got a letter back from their person.
That's absolutely fantastic.
That's part of that creation of incentive in the students, because it means so much more to them if you have writings in which they are going to be sent somewhere or they're going to get a response. Also, when I visited your school, I had some time in your classroom with the young people coming up and telling me what their position or role was. You had them to announce. So tell us about that part of your program, where I assume they're assigned for the whole year a particular role or job in this whole program.
Yes, just I've actually modeled my class after Mission Control, and each person in Mission Control has a different job to do. And so each one of my students has the same name as somebody would in Mission Control, and I gear our launches that we will do outside with our model rockets, and throughout the year, each of their roles will be geared towards the generation of similar things that actual person would do at Houston. So they get very into their roles. I will have ICE teams which work at NASA will work with the launch pads. My ICE team will work with my launch pads. Capcoms, who are the communicators for the on shuttle missions and talk to the astronauts in orbit, my Capcom helps me out in a similar way.
Now, once you have this program up and running each year and get the assignments and they're at a certain level, do you at certain times have like a general assembly with the other classes and students in which they get to see what your students are doing? Do they ever present before the other students?
Usually we'll have our program first thing in the morning, and then we will take the astronaut visitors to the whole entire school for an assembly where all the kids will get to see them. And throughout the year, a lot of the kids see what's going on in my class. So a lot of the kids in the school are pretty aware of what's going on in Mr. Knack's class, and so it's amazing how much they know when they come into my class each year because of what they've seen and that we've already done.
I know that from some of the video I saw, and you hear today too, that you had all the students in the school there to greet the astronauts, but your class was in charge because they were the ones that had the different positions or jobs and responsibilities. But when the astronauts are not there and you've got up into the year quite a ways, do you ever have an opportunity to just take your class and present before the other students?
Sometimes there'll be events that we'll be able to do things like that, and in past years we've been able to display some of the things that we've learned and some of the talents that go on for different events that may happen, and we can incorporate it into other events that come to the school as well, and incorporate our routines and ceremonies, as you would say, into the other events.
When I was there, your students were just so well behaved and all, and so how's this affected discipline? You know, when people are that young, sometimes they get restless, or it's hard to be quiet all day, or has it made it easier for you with disciplinary issues in the classroom?
Absolutely. They, to a large degree, discipline themselves. They will take over and cover a lot of the things, the day-to-day things that will come up in any classroom, and they will help to solve the problems and really work together as a team. It is very important for them to work as a team, and so they will very politely and in the proper way handle a lot of things themselves, and it's marvelous to watch that process at work and know that I've got them working in the fashion of teamwork and cooperation.
Makes it more effective than if you have to do it all yourself in the disciplinary area.
Absolutely.
Janelle Burke.
I would think that one of the things that would be a great byproduct of the space camps is that your young people would get to meet other young people from all over the country. Is that true? And if so, how do they continue with their friendship after the space camp?
I'm not exactly sure on that. They come back with a lot of stories of the kids that they have met at these camps and some really interesting adventures that they talk about. I'm not exactly sure if they've contacted some of them or not. I believe that some of them have and have kept it somewhat in touch, but I really couldn't be for sure on that one.
Now, when they go, I take it that they stay in some kind of a group location, and I know that parents are always very concerned about safety aspects, and is my child going to be safe when they go to camp? And I'm assuming that they have a very controlled situation that the young people are in.
They have a fantastic program there for safety for the children and the way that they watch over them and care for them. And they have basically a housing, like a summer camp that you might go to during the summer and things, and there is housing for the kids and everything is provided for them.
Their food and their lodging, and
yes.
So they have all of those kinds of things are taken care of, and I would assume that they would fly to the location that they're going to be at. And do they fly alone, or do they have a parent with them?
Actually, that's really a great question, because some of the airlines actually are the official airlines of the space camps, and they will take the students individually and they will watch them the whole way there, and are marvelous at making sure the kids are safe and getting to the camps. And then there's somebody to pick them up when they get there. The camps do a really great job of that.
And I suppose that they have very good role models who serve as resident assistants or whatever you want to call them, the people who help in their dormitories or in their sleeping arrangements, that sort of thing.
Yeah, they have camp counselors there that are fantastic, and they really, the kids always come back talking about their counselors and how great they were, and they really have a lot of neat stories about those people.
Chris, we're almost out of time, but how many of your students have gone to those camps or visited those sites at this time?
I believe that the current count is 7 to 8 students have gone down, with many more looking at the possibility.
But the other important point is that all your students get to meet astronauts because you bring them to your schools, you said, over these past years. One other quick question is, you also incorporate music into this process, don't you?
Yes.
And they sing and...
I really want to bring in some of the musical arts and dance and things that we've incorporated into it, so that you're not missing those areas of the curriculum as well. And that's always been very important, and a very big hit with the astronaut visitors.
Yes, because they did for me. They performed and they sang and they greeted me at the door and they escorted me. So you're teaching manners and politeness, and that's also something very important in our society. On that note, Chris Nacarado, who is a teacher at Priest River that has put together this remarkable program for his students over the past few years with astronauts, has been our guest today. Thank you for coming and sharing all this information. I know Janelle joins me in saying that we congratulate you, and I know the parents must be very excited about the programs that you have put on, and good luck to you as you deal with this in the future. And you have other astronauts, I'm sure, here that will come to your school. And one quick note, which is around time, but you're going to go in November, I believe, to watch a launch, one of your friends?
One of the astronauts that was on, that you showed, Dr. Linda Godwin, has invited me down to her launch at the end of November, the next STS-108, the next launch. And we'll be heading down to watch the launch, and hopefully we'll...
Great. Well, thank you very much. And on that note, we have to bring our program to conclusion. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you've enjoyed this program as much as we've enjoyed bringing it to you. We want to thank KSPS in Spokane for allowing us to use our studio over a few weeks. They've been most generous, and we appreciate that very much. We invite you to be with us again next week at this same time. We will discuss yet another issue. Until then, please have a good week. I am Tony Stewart.
Recorded on the campus of North Idaho College, Public Forum is the longest-running entirely college-produced program on PBS. Each episode is pre-recorded live and is an educational outreach from North Idaho College. Please join us again at this same time next week for another edition of Public Forum on this public television station.